Real Country 1430 AM and 107.3 FM WRDN. Brian Winnikins from the NAFB convention, and thank you to our sponsors, including Wisconsin Soybean Marketing Board, Wisconsin Corn Growers Association, Amplify Health, Synergy Co-op, Osteoplastics, Compeer Financial, Animal Wellness Center in Buffalo Valley, Annabis Silo, and Alcivia Co-op. I'm with Cory Rosenbusch. He's president and CEO of the Fertilizer Institute. Talk a little bit about some of the fertilizer markets and that sort of thing going on. And Cory, thanks for joining us. Well, I guess first, the fertilizer markets there's been so many things happening worldwide and all of that they've really been pretty volatile, to say the least, over the last few years. Is that going to continue?
Well, it's been quiet recently, thankfully. So we came off that period of volatility to, I would consider, a time of relatively normalcy.
Whatever that means.
Yeah, whatever that means. I mean, look, when we had 2022 prices that spiked so much, and there was a lot of that up and down that really trapped a lot of our member companies, it made it really difficult for growers to predict. So, now we're at a position where, we're down about 50% over where the prices were in 2022. We've seen kind of a situation where the 10-year average, we're moving below the 10-year average for a lot of the fertilizer products and commodities. So it's good news for the grower, not great news for the financials of some of the member companies that we represent, but that's typical of the industry, right? We operate in cycles. Supply seems very stable despite hurricanes and rail strikes and continued conflict and China's policy to not export any of their product. So overall, though, we're expecting a strong fall application. Yields were really strong, which meant a lot of nutrients had high nutrient uptake, which means we got to replace those nutrients, and we'll see a strong fall application.
As we move into 2025, obviously we have changes in D.C. Is there concerns here? New trade wars?
Well, trade is always a concern, and because we are such a global industry, we always kind of get caught in the middle of some of that. As I think to the new administration and Congress, I'll give you one positive and one thing we're kind of concerned about. On the positive side, I think everyone is optimistic that we'll see a lot of deregulation. Consistently, when we survey our members about their number one up at night issue, it's regulations and it's compliance with regulations. I think we're hoping that there'll be some loosening of that regulatory restriction that we experience, particularly around permitting. You've probably heard me use the example with you before that a phosphate mine took 10 years and $33 million to permit. How can we possibly bolster domestic phosphate supply when China has locked down any of their exports when it takes us 10 years to get something permitted? So I think that's the positive that we're going to see out of the new administration. On the negative or challenge side, you have the trade wars, but we also are concerned about the Inflation Reduction Act. And there are some elements in there that were really important to the industry. Some of these 45 tax credits are not only good for growers and the use of fertilizers that got named in some of the sustainable jet fuel rules, but it also incentivized billions of investments in low-carbon ammonia production. And so those plants are up and being set up, and if that gets taken away, it creates a lot of unpredictability.
And really, markets do not like unpredictability. They don't like chaos, and is that the concern?
That is the concern. I think it's also just, when you're putting billions of dollars into a new ammonia plant, that's not good for anyone. So Wall Street markets don't like that, in addition to commodity markets.
Talking with Cory Rosenbusch, Fertilizer Institute, this morning from the NAFB convention. Obviously, you mentioned the rail strike that had happened in Canada for a while, and it's kind of on a low simmer. The port strike, that's also on a low simmer. That's again, these are issues that farmers just don't have any control over, and that's a frustrating thing, but it's something that has to be dealt with.
Yeah, and I'll just tell a quick story. I testified at a House Natural Resources Subcommittee hearing because of our efforts to try to achieve critical mineral designation for phosphate and potash. And so if you think about potash, 97% of the potash in the United States gets imported. We're lucky, 85% comes from Canada. And the the comment from USGS was, well, we don't need to worry about potash because it comes from Canada and it's a friendly country and there's no supply chain risk. And there absolutely is supply chain risk when you talk about port strikes or rail strikes and we can't get the product across the border. And we were really dangerously close to having significant delays going into application season of that again. So it's frustrating for us that policymakers will use that as an excuse when when there is a huge risk there.
Talking with Cory Rosenbusch with the Fertilizer Institute. Obviously, we're entering lame duck. I'm probably too much like my dad. I'm cynical. The Farm Bill's toast.
There's nothing that's going to move during the lame duck, Farm Bill wise. I think there are other vehicles that perhaps could give some relief for growers there, but long term, short term, I don't see anything moving. I think we're already starting to think about what the next Congress looks like. There's just no incentive with the Republicans controlling both the Senate and the House to do anything right now when you have control in next Congress.
Cory Rosenbusch, he's with the Fertilizer Institute. We're from the NAFB convention in Kansas City. I'm Brian Winnikins. You're this.